of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The King has used his Christmas broadcast to praise individuals, charities and faith groups supporting those in need. In the historic first address, the King also sympathised with households struggling with the rising cost of living, speaking about the great anxiety and hardship people are facing. Earlier, he attended the royal family's traditional Christmas Day church service in Sandringham. The King and Queen Consort were joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children. GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker says the King highlighted the selfless dedication of the armed forces and the emergency services.
His Majesty also paid tributes to the armed forces and emergency service workers who had worked over the period of the Queen's death, but also in the months since. I think it was particularly significant he referred to specifically the public sector workers, including teachers and emergency services, although, as I've already mentioned, because in the last month there have been public service strikes. Nurses have gone on strikes, train drivers have gone on strikes, even ambulance drivers have as well. Now, the King did not officially specifically refer to the strikes. He remained very much impartial, but he did give a slight nod to the work and the service that the public sector provide.
Around 10 people are believed to have been buried in an avalanche in a skiing area in Austria. That's according to the Austrian press agency. The report also says that one person was rescued. APA says several helicopters and search teams were deployed to the area. We'll bring you more on this story as we get it. A 26-year-old woman who was killed in a pub in Merseyside on Christmas Eve was not thought to be targeted. She was celebrating Christmas with her friends and family when she was shot and killed. She was taken to hospital where she died from her injuries. 4 men were also taken to hospital with gunshot wounds after the incident. Merseyside police are urging anyone with information to come forward.
Now is the time for our communities to come together with us to show that the use of guns on our streets will not be tolerated. Our thoughts and condolences are very much with the family of the victim. Today, they should have been celebrating the joy of Christmas. Instead, they're trying to come to terms with what has happened and come to terms with the loss of a much-loved daughter and sister.
The Archbishop of Canterbury has given his Christmas sermon, paying tribute to the late Queen and remembering those who suffer immense anxiety and hardship. Justin Welby said there's unconquerable hope in the birth of Jesus Christ, despite conflicts around the world and the cost of living crisis. He's also praised the example set by the late Queen, saying she lived a life of service and put her interest after those that she served. Over 1 million Americans and Canadians are facing Christmas Day without power as a winter storm continues to sweep across North America. According to reports, 28 people have now died in weather-related incidents across the country. Nearly 3,000 flights were cancelled yesterday, with some airports closed. New York's governor has declared a state of emergency. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have shared a Christmas painting created by Prince George. For those listening to us on the radio, the painting shows a portrait of a reindeer in the snow, along with 2 robins perched on the deer's antlers. And the message attached to the picture says, Merry Christmas. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. I'll be back with more news at the top of the hour.
It's Christmas, and it's time for a very special edition of Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Welcome to Free Speech Nation. It's that time of year when people set aside their differences to really get into the festive spirit of peace and joy. Apart from social justice activists who are probably boycotting Christmas, given that it is a problematic celebration of patriarchal Christianity and free market capitalism. But thankfully, none of those people are here. So I thought it'd be quite fun to look back on some of the highlights of Free Speech Nation from this year. And to help me along, I've got my comedian panellists, Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton. Welcome both. Merry Christmas. Thank you for doing this. We have no audience tonight because it's Christmas and some people have lives. You don't have a life though, Josh. And
I don't have a life. Well, this is actually exactly like the setup that I have at home. Like I have a cutout of you, and then this is where I practice to just like an empty room.
I'm actually a little bit flattered, even though that is creepy. But I like it. And do you like Christmas generally? Are you a fan?
I'm a big Christmas fan. I mean, obviously my family's Jewish. My mum was obsessed. We had the tree. We had all the presents. But actually, we are slightly traumatised because when a couple of years ago, I was around at her house and we were wrapping presents a few days before, and she wouldn't let me borrow the scissors. We had this massive argument, didn't speak for 40 hours. I mean, it was such a petty thing, but she was like, no, you can go downstairs and get your own scissors. I was like, yeah, but you're literally not using the scissors right now. So by the time I use them, you can get back to using them.
This is quite standard Christmas fare, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Didn't speak for 40 hours. Christmas Day arrived. I opened up my present, and obviously she got me a pair of scissors.
Oh, really?
That's about the wittiest thing she's ever done.
Well, that is funny. I mean, but this is it, Cressida. I mean, Christmas is a time where all of a sudden everyone goes back to see the family members they haven't seen for years. They probably left them for a reason, let's be honest.
I mean, we're not religious in our family, so we just call it the Festival of Guilt.
Fair enough.
I love Christmas.
It is fun. It's very nostalgic, isn't it?
It certainly is.
We do enjoy it, but we also enjoy being here and talking you through some of our fantastic clips from Free Speech Nation this year. And I want to start by having a look at this interview from May, which was with American actor and comedian Tyler Fisher. Now, the talent agency AGI had refused Tyler representation, and the reason they gave is because he is a white man. Let's see what he had to say about it.
Well, they reached out to me and said, we love your work. We've been following you for, I don't know if it was months, watching your stand-up, your videos. And then a few months went by. They reached out again, and I took the call and was like, all right, here we go. Going to get my chance to audition for movies and live out my dream. And they're like, everything checks out except your skin color. And I actually wasn't shocked. This happens all the time. It's been happening for 9 years. So I just hit record on my, I was sitting at my podcast desk, and I said, can you say that again a little slower into the camera? And I had him repeat it. I said, you love me. Yes. You think I'm, you think I'm fit for the job, that I can, be a successful actor? Yes. But you won't work with me because I'm white? Yes. All right, got it. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch.
That's very surprising, because normally when these kind of things happen, they don't say it explicitly to your face. They'll come up with some... But also, didn't they know that you were white? They'd been watching your videos. Had they been doing it blindfold? What's going on?
Well, the problem is my dad is white, but my mom is actually more beige. We're from southern Connecticut. It's near the border of Connecticut and New York, so it's kind of hard to tell. Yes, they knew I was white. Of course they did, but they caved to the woke ideology. You know, I feel bad for them. They didn't want to do it, but the movie studios are telling the casting directors tell the agents, and everybody's complicit, and that's just the way it goes now, and nobody seems to want to talk about it.
But my understanding is that discrimination on the basis of race is illegal. Why is it you think people just ignore that particular law?
There's all sorts of reasons. The people will say, you know, white people have had your time. You know, you guys have had it great. And I'm going, I just got to the party. I haven't, you know, I'm 5'2". I can't even ride a roller coaster legally. You know, life is not a pile of, flowers and money for me at the moment. So, everybody gets a fair shot.
And how widespread do you think this problem is? I mean, you're talking about your particular experience, but do you think there are lots of comics out there who are experiencing this kind of thing?
I've received, I'd say, upwards of 500 messages just on Instagram alone. This happened to me. I just didn't get it recorded. They tell me at comedy clubs. I mean, I've lost several jobs where they just tell me on the phone. I've gotten... one of my last acting agents just emailed and said, tough out there for white dudes, and then remove me from the roster. But, this one I got on tape. That's the difference.
But it's so shocking in a way. I mean, it did happen to me actually many years ago when I was longlisted for a theatre company's writing group.
Enough.
But someone inside the theatre told me secretly, you're not being shortlisted because you're white. And I just thought, OK, well, that's weird, but OK. But now that seems like that's quite a normal thing. And I suppose the problem is, it might sound like you're complaining or say, oh, poor white people, poor white males can't get work. It does, on the face of it, sound a bit ridiculous, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, look, I mean, after this happened, I started a podcast. I started filming videos every day. I built my career up on the internet. You know, I pulled in 6 figures last year. I mean, like, but that's not what it's about. It's about everybody gets a fair shot. And there's this notion people have to stop biting on these ideas of reverse racism or reverse discrimination. These are made up words that, you can't find in a law book. There's no mention of that. It's
but activists would say that, well, racism, you can't be racist towards white people because white people are the privileged, powerful group, right?
Sure. They also say men can have babies and there's 1,000 pronouns. These are all made up things. They're not real. They're made up. And so this is just another one of them that got caught up in that sort of woke circus. And I'm not speaking up for white people or men or anybody. I just am putting my foot down and saying, I am not going to stand for this anymore because, this is my life. I get one go at this. I'm not going to. They want you to sit down and shut up and sacrifice yourself. And I would say to them, well, you do it. You sacrifice your job or your life. They're not going to.
So this is why you're not settling, because you think this is actually about a bigger principle. And I suppose you hope that this might set a precedent to change things, do you think?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I can't really speak to the settlement or what's moving forward with the lawsuit quite yet. But yeah. I mean, I'll take the hit. It's fortunately I don't have to go to war. I'm too short and I have flat feet. But I was waiting for somebody else to stand up, and it's not happening. And so I'll do it. And I waited until I had my own career, so I can tour and sell out clubs. And I wanted to wait to make sure that I wasn't playing the victim card or that it looked that way. It's just this is just the law, and anybody's welcome to use it if they have evidence.
Well, that's it. I mean, the woke movement has become so widespread, but a lot of this stuff hasn't been tested legally. And often what you find that when it is tested legally, it doesn't stand up. And it turns out that, oh, well, it is illegal to discriminate on the basis of race after all. Oh, what a mistake we made, So hopefully this will work. Are you optimistic that things will change? Do you think we're just in this kind of weird rut at the moment where this sort of ideology is completely dominating the industry and that actually will come out of it eventually?
Yeah, I think the tide has actually already turned, but people haven't caught up with it. I think they've hit a wall. They've gone as far as they could with the craziness. The tide is actually turning back, and people have a choice to swim with it at this point and just start saying what they think, because free speech is free and it's a fundamental right. And so, yeah, I absolutely. I mean, you know, I stopped watching all of the streaming channels and all those shows, and a lot of people are. And that's why Netflix is standing up and saying, if you're super woke, you might not want to work here. The capitalism in the end is going to make the decision. And that's why I'm selling out. And a lot of comedians who are speaking out or just telling jokes, you know, how it used to be 10 years ago.
I actually met Tyler in New York a couple of weeks ago, so it was interesting to meet him. He's a very good comedian. I saw him do stand-up. It was hilarious. He doesn't really deserve this, does he?
Well, first of all, I'm suffering from beard envy.
He's got a good beard.
He's got a great looking beard,
Yeah.
and I would hire him on the spot just for that bit.
On the beard alone?
On the beard alone, that's enough talent for me.
Yeah.
It is encouraging to hear that he's also funny, because as he sort of says, and I think he's quite clever the way that he left this complaint or to pursue this until the point where he, first of all, wouldn't be affected by the blowback, because of course there are going to be people now probably accusing him of being racist and whatnot. But now that he's got his own audience, he doesn't need to suffer necessarily because of that.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is it's like it makes him less of a victim, where he's going, because I know people who have complained, and you know, comedians are in car journeys and you're sitting next to somebody and they're like, oh my God, the reason I don't get to do the Comedy Store is because I'm this or that or whatever, and you're like, no, it's because you're rubbish.
Yeah.
And that's the reality.
But I can testify, Tyler Fisher is actually a very, very good stand-up. So this wasn't that at all. And the difference here is they actually said on tape that it was because he was white, and he had the foresight to record that conversation. Well, actually, he didn't. He only started recording it midway through.
He got a second chance, yeah. But this doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, this is just common practice where I see gig listings.
Yeah.
It'll often say female act preferred. I think sometimes it'll even say non-white males preferred. So, what's the story?
Well, when did this become acceptable? Because I thought that discrimination on the basis of skin colour wasn't legal. So I do find this a bit odd, and it is. We all know this is happening within the arts industry very, very clearly, but it's just weird to hear them admit it. I think that's what's weird about this.
Absolutely.
You know?
But as he says, I mean, it's not weird when you know that this is what has been going on.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think that they realise their hypocrisy in the way they're saying it, and also. And we're going to bring it back with three comedians, so we're going to relate it to our industry, but. Comedy is so specifically about making people laugh. Like it arguably should be more of a meritocracy than you can get away with, because other things are about like art or painting or even acting is somewhat subjective. Right. And of course comedy is subjective, but really you're either making the audience laugh or you're not.
I think it should be a meritocracy.
Yeah, it should be.
Well, why isn't it? I mean, so when I come to program my club, Comedy Unleashed, I don't think about race, gender, sexuality. I don't care about any of those things. I care about whether they're funny or not. Yeah. And as a result...
And will they do it?
And whether they'll do it. But we end up with a really diverse, in the way that they mean, range anyway, because we apply meritocracy and we end up with people from all sorts of backgrounds, and that just happens naturally.
And nobody questions why you've chosen the accent you've chosen, so you don't get into this ridiculous situation where it's like, am I here because I'm this or that, or am I here because I'm genuinely funny?
OK, well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be revisiting our rather fiery debate about the potential need for a UK black civil rights group. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. May of this year saw the birth of the UK's first black British civil rights group. The British Equity Organisation was formed with the aim of ending systemic racism in Great Britain. And to discuss this, we had the actor and activist Femi Nylander and the commentator Calvin Robinson.
The point of the matter is that if black people are more likely to be in poverty because of the fact that they are more likely to be maybe from the Caribbean, they're more likely to be people of the Windrush generation, people who literally came from a country which was a slave colony of the UK to the UK to help build the UK, invited by the UK government under the Windrush scandal, many of them forcibly ejected, then the fact that they are overrepresented in impoverished council estates is itself an aspect of systemic racism. It's not something you can point at and say, well, actually, it's a matter of class. You can't pit class. You can't pit class against racism.
Do you accept that, Calvin? I mean, Femi's argument that racism and racist systems can exist irrespective of intention, actually. They can be built in. I mean, you could say that the housing situation in America with redlining and the idea that it's true that black families living today are still suffering from the racial segregation of the past. That's true, isn't it?
Yes, but America has a very different system to what we have. We haven't had slaves in the UK. We've got a very different black history, because black history is British history. As Femi pointed out, people from the Caribbean were invited over to Britain and came over. My grandparents came over very proud to be British Commonwealth citizens and very proud to join the United Kingdom. The difference here, I think Femi is very, very close. If there's a part of the river that is disenfranchised or impoverished, you improve that whole part of the river, not just for the black ducks. This is the issue. Yes, there are parts of our inner cities where black people are disproportionately stopped and searched, for example. That's because black people in those areas are disproportionately in taking part in crime. Knife crime with injury, 70% of criminals are black and ethnic minorities.
Do you not think there's an element of racism to the choice of the people that the police stop?
No, the racism isn't the people stopping. The racism is the black-on-black crime. We need to affect these areas.
Let's bring Femi on
Most stopping and searching isn't actually about knife crime. Most stopping and searching is about drug offences. And the stats show that white people and black people, I mean, when you look, in London specifically, you have knife crime, but across the country, most stopping and searching is about drug offences, and the stats show that white people are just as likely to smoke weed as black people, but black people are much more likely to go to jail for smoking weed because of the fact that, like you see with the child Q, where they saw a black girl, a 15-year-old black girl, in a classroom, and 2 police officers took her to a back room and strip searched her because the teacher said they smelt weed.
Right, so into an individual case there, but you're onto something. So in drug crime in particular, 70% of drug criminals are white, whereas 86% of the British population is white. So there's still a disproportionality there in that black people are committing more crimes in that area. But when we talk about why black people are going into prison more than white people, that's because that's not systemic. That's not because the judges or the police are racist. That's because black people tend to plead not guilty more than white people who tend to plead guilty, and you get lesser sentence if you plead guilty. So they're playing the system. It's not that the system is against them. It's using the same structures that we all have access to in a different way.
7 times more? I mean, black people, young black people.
Absolutely.
So I think if you look at the actual stats behind the people who are taken to trial who are black, so let's not talk about not guilty. You have to be taken to trial first. Yeah. And the people who are taken to trial themselves are much more likely to be black.
No, I just said, in drug crime, it's 70% white people, so they're much more likely to be white, actually. Those are the statistics from the government website.
Can we talk about possible solutions, though? I mean, everyone accepts that racism still exists within the country, right?
A solution is, we can't have movements that say, well, we are black civil rights movements, because there are no civil rights that black people do not have in this country. That is a divisive ideology based on critical race theory, based on American politics, of pitting black people against white people. What we have to do is look at our society and look at areas of deprivation and fix them for everybody, no matter what their skin colour.
Do you think the name of this new civil rights group is a problem? The fact that they're implying...
What rights do they want that they don't already have?
Femi?
I mean, civil rights for black people in the UK, I mean, civil rights, and you say that it's a horrible thing that's come from America. When we look at... I was taught in school, I was taught about the civil rights struggle in America. I wasn't taught anything about the civil rights struggle in the UK, which is long and very, very vibrant. And I was taught about Malcolm X, I was taught about Martin Luther King, I was taught about the NAACP, all of these things. And they're great things which have led to the deconstruction. And you mentioned as well that the legal status of black people means that they have rights. Again, when we look at Jim Crow, what was the terminology? Separate but equal.
You're talking about American politics.
Let's not talk about American politics. Let's talk about the UK.
America had slaves in their country. They fought a long battle.
The UK had slaves. They just took them over to the Caribbean.
They never had slaves in this country.
Okay. If I have a personal slave...
In this country,
one at a time, please.
Black people have exactly the same rights as white people. Men have exactly the same rights as women. We are an equal country. We have equality under the law. If you feel like someone is discriminating against you, you can take them to court.
But do you think that Femi's view that, we should be taught, though, about the British complicity in the slave trade? I mean, it's true that there weren't slaves here, but they were certainly trading.
It's a part of the national curriculum. We learn about the British Empire, the British colonies. We hear about immigration. It's all on the curriculum. Look it up. I mean, you can say you didn't learn it, but maybe you didn't remember being taught it, or maybe you were taught it poorly, or maybe it wasn't on the curriculum when you were in school. But it certainly is now. I can tell you as a teacher, deputy head, governor, that it is on the curriculum.
So do you think that things have changed, maybe that people are now, that there are improvements here, that those gaps within education are being filled? And
it's perfectly correct that there is now some teaching of empire in schools, and that's largely because of the movements like Rhodes Must Fall, which have pushed for the decolonisation.
No, they're on the curriculum before Rhodes Must Fall. These are extremist people that are destroying our society by tearing down public monuments and statues that belong to all of us, not just a particular demographic, and making a mess of our race relations, which was very, very strong until groups like Black Lives Matter came along and caused division where it didn't exist to begin with.
Do you think, Femi, that there is... do you take on board the argument that when people talk about systemic racism, and when they can't necessarily point to any evidence other than disparity of outcome, that people are sceptical about that? And
I think people who are racism sceptical about racist... I mean, people who think that the fact that black people are so much less, especially black Caribbean people, are so much less likely to succeed in education in the UK, and they say, well, you can't say that racism is a factor. Well, then what's the other factor? You think that black people are stupider than white people? You think that they're less hardworking than white people? Or maybe there's a problem with the education system. Maybe there's a problem by which these children aren't encouraged. Maybe there's a problem by which these students are much more likely to go to underperforming schools because of the fact that they're in impoverished situations, and they're less represented in the high-performing grammar schools and the private schools, etc. And when you look at the facts, the facts back this up. This is true. You just have to read the statistics.
Again, you're very, very close. So it's a case of, in schools, we're telling black people, that the young black kids, that they are victims. We're telling them that they're held back. We're telling them that there are hurdles against them and they'll never succeed. So they start to believe that. That's where the racism comes from. We are putting it on them. We're teaching them racism.
So it was a very interesting discussion, Cressida, I thought, because both individuals, they have very, very different perspectives on this. And it comes down to this thing of whether or not you believe that the country is systemically racist. Clearly, Femi believes that, and Calvin most definitely doesn't.
I thought it was all about ducks in the canal, so it threw me.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you agree with one or the other, or do you think it just needs more conversation?
I'm very interested in Calvin's point that if you tell particularly, young black children that they're at a disadvantage, what kind of impact does that have? I don't think that's a good way to start your life.
Yes.
I really feel like it gets brushed aside all the time, but I really feel like that's a terrible imposition to put on somebody.
So, I mean, there are all sorts of comparisons there. I mean, I gave a talk at a girls' school the other year, and they were talking about how these pupils are often told that they will always be oppressed, will always be under the thumb of the patriarchy. But these girls were very rich. I mean, this is one of the poshest schools. So, and I kind of felt maybe that's not helpful.
Well, that's my view on it. I feel like there's lots of unintended consequences when you try and help.
On the other hand, Josh, as Femi was pointing out, there are examples, and there clearly are still examples, of where racial discrimination exists and is perpetuated, and he wants to address that. So what's wrong with that?
That's fine. I mean, first of all, I think what's interesting about the clip we just saw is how you or the editors here cut off the beginning of the clip, which is you repeatedly asking Femi where he's from. But that's that's your choice. If
I
you
just
want to
felt
cut that.
We didn't want to go down that road.
Okay, it's an artistic decision.
He never gave me an answer though. It's
No,
interesting.
fine. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like you moved his hair. It was very awkward. But
I do hope that people know what your reference is here. Otherwise, it'll just make me look like a horrible racist.
I hope they don't. Yeah, I'm not going to argue there's not racism in this country. But what was interesting about the report that they were referring to was that when they were talking about different educational outcomes within black communities, they were, the black community is not some homogenous group. This has got many different facets to it, and so the children from recent Nigerian immigrants were doing better than people from Afro-Caribbean. So you can't just argue it's the colour of people's skin. There are these other factors,
and if indeed outperforming white children as well.
But the point is that you have to address, and that's I believe what the report. And I'm not saying it was the perfect report, but certainly we have to be. Or people have to be honest about where these problems lie to be able to deal with them.
Yes.
To just point and go, the system is racist, and that's why I think that's a mistake.
Well, Chris, so it's interesting because Josh made that rather ill-advised joke about Lady Hussey earlier and tried to imply that I was doing the same thing. But actually, it was a funny joke, Josh. I was joking. But the point about that is sometimes people are detecting racism where it might not be, and maybe this kind of discourse doesn't help.
Well, I'm reluctant to say because obviously it's easy for me to say, but that's my fear. I know you can't compare gender and race. For one thing, I think men and women are different. I don't think the races are fundamentally different. But I come at it as a woman, and I feel like sometimes we see problems with sexism where I personally don't perceive them, and I wonder whether that's happening here as well. I don't know.
Very interesting. Well, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be looking back on my interview with Father Ted creator Graham Linehan over his cancelled musical. See you in 3 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate. with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So at October's Battle of Ideas Festival in Westminster, I had the pleasure of presenting a live edition of Free Speech Nation to an audience of over 200 people. And one of the highlights of that show was my chat with the creator of the sitcom Father Ted, Graham Linehan. Now, Graham told the story about what it feels like to be cancelled for wrongthink and how his stage musical of Father Ted has now been put on hold.
I'm always on the lookout for something that seems like a thing. As soon as I see a thing is happening, I think that might be useful. And the thing that kept happening for me was that people who didn't really have the temperament to be in important jobs started getting important jobs, namely Trump and Corbyn. And the fact that there were two at the same time that seemed very unsuited for their job, I thought, oh, maybe Ted can become a cardinal, you know?
Well, people do fail upwards, don't they?
Yeah, well, that's it. So Ted was failing upwards, and I had that idea. Someone sent me a book called The Secret Life of the American Musical, which is a kind of a brilliant history of the American musical, but done in the structure of which song goes where. So opening song, main character song, etc., etc., etc. It provides a structure while also allowing for you to have fun and be creative within it. So I used that to mark out where the songs would go and what kind of songs they would be. I knew I'd need a Mrs. Doyle song, a Ted song, songs that kind of expressed who they were, deep down, I guess, but still trying to be comic, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, we did all that. The script went through a number of what usually happens with a script is that usually it's way too complicated. And as soon as we simplified it, as soon as we brought it right back down to what it was about for each character, it just transformed, and it's been in great shape ever since.
Because people don't realise with musicals, there is that structure which you can play with, but there's always like an I Want number, an 11 o'clock number, and all these sorts of things.
Like the South Park musical was a model in the sense that, you know, they took the conventions and completely ripped them apart.
Yeah.
You know, so. That was a big inspiration.
And so you'd written this, and and of course the other thing, of course, is the songs often move the plot forward, don't they? So they're sort of an integral part of it. So when
I wish I could tell you more about it. Oh my God.
We're not allowed to talk much about the content, I suppose.
Well, you know, I mean, I still want it to be made.
Yeah, of course.
And I want people to be surprised by everything we have in it, you know. So
yeah. What happens at the end? No, we won't do that. But it is interesting, isn't it? Because it's been put on hold.
Not put on hold. They say they're not doing it. I think Hat-Trick need me to die before they'll put it on.
To explain to people, so Hat-Trick Productions are, of course, the production production company that originally commissioned Father Ted. I mean, they commissioned this musical, so they have the rights to it. And you've described it as that the musical is being held hostage, I think you said.
Yeah.
So can you tell us why that is? Why do they no longer want to make this? Obviously, I mean, it would be box office, right? Everyone would want to see this.
Yeah, the way I look at it is it's preemptive cultural vandalism. You know, it's something that's been cancelled before it even appeared. So I don't really know what to say, except, you know, it's, they've never told me what I've done wrong. They've never told me what I've said that they disagree with. When I asked once, someone in the room rolled their eyes as if it was obvious.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, actually, it's not obvious. Mermaids is now going down because of our work. Well done to everyone here who helped that happen. You know, we've been uncovering the effects of queer theory, the effects of safeguarding being removed for these vulnerable children, the women who are losing their livelihoods and their jobs. Rosie, who's here, I think, you know, all of these matters are, you know, I think we've been vindicated completely.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. And of course, you've been so vocal about this for so long, and you've paid the price. I think it's always the case with these kind of cultural hysteria. The first people to speak out are the ones to be punished, effectively. But it does make it easier for people later on.
Oh, I hope so. That was always the plan. I just didn't think it would take everyone so long to turn up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe explain to some people, because obviously, just in case people don't know, that's the police coming for Graham right now. You've been very vocal about your view that women shouldn't be monstered as TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, or demonised simply for saying that their rights partly depend on an acknowledgement of biological reality and that their spaces should be preserved. And you've made this case. You've been called a transphobe, hateful, far-right, you name it, all of that stuff, for simply making these points, which are actually a very liberal point of view.
You know, everybody just assumed all this to be true like 5 minutes ago, like Douglas Murray often says.
Yes.
You know, and people walk into these traps that they didn't even know were there. You know, like whenever I see someone apologise, I just think, no, never, ever apologise.
And when people say, but there is no, we were talking earlier about Graham Norton's comment that there was no such, that cancel culture should be called accountability.
But again, accountability for what? For revealing that children are being hurt, you know? That like I found out from Elaine Miller, who's a physiotherapist, that young girls who are on testosterone for enough amount of time will go into the menopause 30 years too early.
Yeah.
None of these kids are being told this. They're being sold a vision of transitioning. Ben Cohen did a poster of just a man with a flat chest and hair on his chest and called it Trans Joy. How many young kids will have read that and thought that, you know, this is just a wonderful way to express themselves? It carries massive medical consequences. And these kids just are being lied to, and they're they're grooming each other, they're being groomed by bad actors, not you know, the Harry Potter gang, but like, you know, it's a huge society-wide problem. I've been contacted by Scottish rape victims who can't go to rape crisis services because there's a man in charge of Edinburgh Rape Crisis. I've been contacted by therapists who, one therapist said, these young kids come in tears because they think J.K. Rowling wants them dead. And she can't tell them that it's not true because the kids might report her to her accreditation body.
So this is mass fantasy, you know.
It's a mass delusion. It's like the satanic panic or any mass delusion, but what it's had is the turbocharging power of the internet.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like these phrases that we often hear. You know, you're denying my right to exist. You're doing all this sort of stuff. They've basically just been grooming themselves with these phrases.
Fascinating interview, even if I do say so myself. Not because I did it, but because of what he's got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad that I finally got to see it because I was there on the day.
Yes.
And then when he went on stage, I was like, do I have enough time to run to the toilet for a wee wee? And so now I finally get to see that. And yeah, he's been a big comedy hero of mine. And he's also been a hero in him highlighting these issues that he talks about there.
And one of the first to do so, and it has come with a cost, right?
With a massive price to him.
Yeah.
So I really do respect him for all of those reasons.
I mean, this is sort of incredible. The idea that the television company that have the rights to the Father Ted musical are basically saying we're not going to put this on, even though it's going to be box office. It's like people are going to love this. It's going to make a lot of money, but they're not interested. Almost on a matter of spite. I mean, that's my assumption, because they just don't agree. Why does it matter what a creative thinks? Why can't producers just say, well, that's your opinion, we have different opinions, but it doesn't matter?
Absolutely. I think it is such a loss, because I think it would have been brilliant. You know, if they can't make it, can they make an episode of Father Ted where he tries to put on a musical? I think it would just be fantastic.
That would be good.
It would be a huge hit.
Well, I think, you know, hopefully it will happen, but, you know, it's a long... And also, I do feel like Graham has been very much vindicated now. You know, we've had the closure of the Tavistock, we've had these the revelations about mermaids. Everything that he warned about has turned out to be true.
But none of those people who've been sort of calling for his, well, not calling for, who literally have cancelled, all of those comedians that we know who have just made him out to be this massive villain, not one of them has rescinded and gone, you know what, I made a mistake, I'm sorry.
No.
None of them have. So until those cultural gatekeepers, I guess, finally grow up and actually can recognise when they made a mistake, then the situation's not going to change.
Absolutely. OK, well, after the break, we're going to be showing my interview with a terminally ill man who was arrested for mooning at a speed camera. Don't go away.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there. Welcome back to this festive edition of Free Speech Nation. Now, back in August, I interviewed Daryl Meakham from Kidderminster, who had just been found not guilty of mooning a speed camera as part of his bucket list. So there were 2 charges of using insulting language, resisting arrest and obstructing an officer. They were also dropped, presumably unlike his trousers. He came on to tell us some more. The audience absolutely loved him. Let's take a look at the interview.
Sarah got out of the car, and then I noticed in the corner of my eye a white van down the road, and I thought, oh, that's a speed camera. Right, let's do it, as you do. So I got out of my car, and I literally just showed a little bit of my bum, gave a wiggle, got back in my car, and had a round of applause off some builders that were there. You know, hey, nice one, nice one. So I got back in the car, and then I suppose about a minute later, I thought I'd got a traffic warden at the car. He was at the back in uniform, taking notes down, and I wound the window down, and I said, I'm not parked illegally, I'm just waiting to get in a disabled bay. And he said, I'm not a traffic warden. He said, I'm the speed cameraman that you just indecently exposed to. I said to him, you've really walked all the way up here for that, a silly little thing like that. And he was really serious, and he said, yeah, and he started taking notes down, and I thought, that's ridiculous. So parking space became available, so I thought, oh, I'm going to get in there. And as I pulled forward, he ran in front of the car. So I stopped, reversed, went forward, he ran in front of the car. And I said, look, mate, if you don't move out of the way, you're going to get run over. So we moved out of the way, pulled into the parking bay, Sarah got in the car, and I drove off home. I'd say within 15 minutes of getting through the front door, heard a knock on the door, and I peeked through the window. I thought, oh, we've got a policeman at the door. So I went to them, I said, what do you want? And he said, we want to talk to you about an indecent exposure. Now, as far as I'm aware, with English law, or British law, UK law, you know, mooning isn't a criminal offence. So I said, well, you know, I'm sorry, but you're not coming in. And he didn't at any stage say that I was going to be arrested. I just said, you're not coming in. And he said, well, you're going to have to let us in. I said, no, you're not coming in. So he stood there, and I thought, we'll have a little bit of fun with him now. So I put my big Alexa on, and I started playing Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. I opened up the window, I put it on full blast, and I started singing it to him, which he was slightly amused with. And I told him he'd got a silly haircut because he'd got a bun on his head. So I then shut the curtain, shut the window, sat down, and I did feel a little bit smug, to be honest, you know, because I've been a good boy all my life. I was, you know, a university lecturer, I was a nurse, etc. And I'd actually done something a bit naughty for a change, you know, so I felt a little bit smug, even though I knew it wasn't against the law. Anyway, I'd say a few minutes later, heard another knock at the door. We're going to break the door down. And I thought, oh dear. So I opened the curtain, and it was actually, looking at the police footage from the court, it was 4 squad cars plus the van. And I actually thought, my God, what are the neighbours going to think? They're going to think I'm a drug dealer. So I shut the curtain, and I said to Sarah, oh no, if I go out there, they're going to, you know, grapple me and beat me up. So I went to them and I said, look, you're not coming in. And they said, well, if you don't answer the door, we'll break it in. So they got bolt croppers. They bolt cropped the front door handle off, and then they started pounding on all the windows, and they were goading by sticking their fingers up and all sorts of hand gestures and shouting. And it was a bit like having, you know, the old Zulu tribe outside the house banging like bum, 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 bum on the windows, and they kept that up for a good 10 minutes. And my wife was getting really disturbed at this point. So I said, look, Sarah, I'll go out to them. Go and fetch me a clean T-shirt, because I was really quite sweaty at this point. She got me a clean T-shirt, she put my shoes on, and I could walk at this stage, a lot better than I can now. I went out of the back door, and just as I'm going out of the back door, they broke the back gate off. You know, it's a brand new back gate. So as I'm standing there, and, you know, 6 or 7 of them piled into the back garden, I shouted at them, you reckless bunch of C ending with an S. But obviously, because I can't move very well, you know, there was no aggression physically from me or anything like that. And they dived on top of me. They were trying to force my arms up my back. And they didn't lower me to the floor gently. They kicked my legs from under me, and they kicked me in the head as I went down as well. And while I'm on the floor, I could see the one policewoman, she's got pepper spray in my face. And I always thought, blimey, this really is like a Monty Python sketch. It's absolutely surreal.
Well,
and I tried
we can
to
actually
stay
see the
because
footage.
as you can see, my stomach's quite big because of gastroparesis, because of the MSA. So I couldn't breathe properly, so I had to stay calm. Otherwise, they would have killed me very quickly of a respiratory arrest.
Well, we're watching it right now, Daryl, and we can see it on the screen what they were doing. And I think people were just very shocked by the extremity of what was going on there. Have there been any repercussions, do you know, with the police and for their behaviour?
Well, no, there hasn't really been any repercussions. I think what did happen, though, is that someone from Kidderminster Police Station leaked some quite nasty obscenities that I'd been exposing my genitals to children, and that got out onto Lad Bible, and I was having some really horrible emails, messages, and the police actually had to put me under police protection for a couple of weeks, even though that wasn't the case at all. What happened? You know, it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and, you know, there was actually nobody about, you know, so it was just complete overkill by the police.
Well, I mean, you've now been vindicated. You've now been found not guilty. So how does that feel now that it's all resolved?
Relief, absolutely relief. You know, and I'm really lucky because, you know, I've got some good friends, and I've got a great friend of mine, Mr. Alan Lewis, who's brought me here to Madeira because he's worth a bob or two. I'm not, but he is. So he's brought me here to Madeira this week to see if I can catch a marlin, but we didn't have any luck at that because I couldn't really stand up on the boat, which was a bit of a shame. But it's a lovely hotel nonetheless, the Portamare, and we're just having a lovely couple of days just to chill off, relax, and, you know, hopefully get some normality out of it, you know, because the police just kept going and going and going. They changed the charges 3 times until they found something that they think could fit.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
It's ridiculous.
After all you've been through, you definitely deserve that holiday, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, Daryl. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I mean, it's good that the verdict went that way, wasn't it, that he was found not guilty, because, look, this is a man nearing the end of his life who wanted to do something fun. It's on his bucket list.
It's extraordinary. It shows that off the cuff is always good, isn't it? He said he just did it in the spur of the moment. Brilliant. Fantastic.
And fun, and it is funny, you know, the idea of mooning a speed camera.
It's hilarious, but I'm not sure about the 6 police people. I mean, is this why there's no money for nurses? It's just extraordinary.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're behaving like some kind of terrorist that they need to take down.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very strange, Josh.
I mean, that guy was just a comedy natural.
Yeah.
And it sort of made me jealous as he was telling his story. But it's upsetting to see that the footage of the police people and how just heavy-handed they were, and it was just so utterly unnecessary. And it's not just about nurses or those, but you know, there aren't enough police. But the police that we have, they're not doing their job properly.
We get this again and again when you get these really heavy-handed things, like police arresting people for memes online, and you know, there's like 8 of them turn up like a SWAT team, and you just think, come on, people,
well,
you know,
it's easy pickings for them. That's what it is.
Is that what it is?
It's easy. People are lazy. They want to do the least that they can, and that goes with policemen. They don't want to chase down rapists and murderers and actually put some hard graft in it. They want to turn up at some guy who's literally dying, a whole bunch of them, and tell him, you know, arrest him
for mooning,
physically manhandle him.
Yeah, it's very, very bizarre. But look, we've got to move on now. Coming up in the next hour, I'll have Spiked Online's Ella Whelan, former Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe, and I'll be playing one of the liveliest debates from Free Speech Nation in 2022. See you in 3 minutes. My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry across the southeast but showers elsewhere. Some will be wintry in the north. Let's take a look at the details. It will be a cold start across Scotland with some icy stretches in places. Further wintry showers will also move into northern and western areas with a Met Office yellow, snow and ice warning in force. Boxing Day will also start cold across Northern Ireland with a yellow ice warning in effect. Showers will also spread across the country throughout the morning. Many northeastern parts of England will start the day dry with a patchy frost. Further west, though, there will be some wintry showers around. A few showers may also move into northwest Wales early on in the morning before becoming more widespread across Wales as Boxing Day morning progresses. The showers also possibly wintry over the higher ground. Boxing Day morning across the Midlands will start on a chilly but bright note. Some cloud, however, will build as the morning goes on, and it will feel notably colder than Christmas Day. Any overnight rain across East Anglia will quickly clear during the morning, leaving a dry and bright morning. It will be feeling colder, especially in the northwesterly wind. Cloud and rain will also quickly clear Kent and Sussex, leaving much of the southern England dry with spells of sunshine during Boxing Day morning. A few showers, though, may begin to move into the southwest. Looking ahead to lunchtime, and showers will continue across northern and western areas, with eastern areas largely dry and bright. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The King has used his Christmas broadcast to praise individuals, charities and faith groups supporting those in need. In the historic first address, the King also sympathised with households struggling with the cost of living crisis, speaking about the great anxiety and hardship people are facing. The King highlighted the selfless dedication of the armed forces and emergency services, calling it a value embodied by the late Queen. Earlier, he attended the royal family's traditional Christmas Day church service in Sandringham. The King and the Queen Consort were joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children. Around 10 people are believed to have been buried in an avalanche in a skiing area in Austria. That's according to the Austrian press agency. The report also says that one person was rescued. APA says several helicopters and search teams were deployed to the area. And the search is continuing for a gunman who killed a 26-year-old woman in Merseyside on Christmas Eve. She was celebrating Christmas with friends and families when she was shot and killed. Police say she wasn't thought to be targeted. The woman was taken to hospital where she died from her injuries. 4 men were also taken to hospital with gunshot wounds after the incident. Over 1 million Americans and Canadians are facing Christmas Day without power as a winter storm continues to sweep across North America. According to reports, 28 people have died so far in weather-related incidents across the country. Nearly 3,000 flights were cancelled yesterday, with some airports closed. New York's governor has declared a state of emergency. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have shared a Christmas painting created by Prince George. The 9-year-old prince painted a reindeer with 2 robins sitting on its antlers. And the message attached to the picture says Merry Christmas. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. I'll be back with more news at the top of the hour.
Welcome back to this Christmas edition of Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, and my lovely guests, Josh Howie and Cressida Wetton. And still to come, we're going to be showing the liveliest debate from the show in 2022. Plus, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe says feminism is bonkers. And we'll have some of your favourite features, of course, such as social sensations and unfiltered dilemmas. Our first clip for this hour has myself and columnist for Spiked Online, Ella Whelan, discussing whether great art should carry a trigger warning. So in February of 2022, audiences were warned about scenes of sexual aggression before a showing of Handel's Theodora at the Royal Opera House. Let's take a look at what Ella had to say.
Now, you wrote a very interesting article about this point of view, and your argument was really that that great art is meant to trigger you in some circumstances. Can you sort of talk us through that?
Well, the funny thing about the Theodora production is that there was this great 3-star review afterwards that said, you know, opera goers are very used to gore and sex and all that kind of stuff. And actually that this production was really tame and everyone was kind of waiting for the terrorism and all that stuff to kick in.
So it raised expectations a bit too much.
So that can partly be why trigger warnings are a problem, because they make you think something's going to happen that isn't. But what I was trying to argue is that the whole way in which we interact with art, whether it's a film or a book, and by the way, you know, great art and also crap art, is that we're meant to come to it from our own kind of authentic experience. Now, people read reviews of books. People, to a certain extent, are prepped. They might, you know, see clips of it online. But that experience that we have with a work, particularly with things like painting or a great classic, has to be some kind of interaction between two forces, between you and the artist, the author, the person, you know, the composer. And I think trigger warnings just get in the way of that. Really what it is an imposition from the publisher or the curator, these people who a lot of the time don't have much talent, to come in and basically stick their oar in. And I think that there probably are a lot of artists and writers who are turning in their graves at some of the stuff that's tagged onto their great works.
So then what would you say to the argument that, well, you know, we always put warnings on films, the BBFC often say there's scenes of sexual nature, etc., as a kind of guide for parents. Would you say that that should be distinguished from the kind of warnings you're talking about?
Well, the thing about kids and adults is that, I mean, obviously we have a watershed, we have all these rules that say that we don't allow children to just wander into pornographic material or violent stuff.
Yeah.
And that's fair enough. We don't want kids to get upset. But really, trigger warnings are actually about adults, and they're mainly about university students. So the Mail on Sunday's been spending all its time sending out freedom of information requests to university and has found that for example, at the University of Aberdeen, students were told that Julius Caesar centred around a plot on murder. Now, that's just a plot spoiler. I mean, it's, you know...
But it's not really a plot spoiler. It's something they should already know, right?
Yeah, I'm being kind of being too generous to students. I mean, there was a trigger warning on Harry Potter at one university, and I think, why are students learning about Harry Potter at university? That's for another rant. But there's this suggestion that trigger warnings are really just about kind of being appropriate.
Yes.
But if you are past the age of, if you are into adulthood, then what becomes appropriate for you is completely subjective. And actually, with particularly students at universities, we should be pushing the idea that the idea of appropriate or safe or comfortable for them should be thrown out of the window, because I think some of the best experiences I ever had was when I was completely taken out of my comfort zone. And there's also a kind of an element of, if I want to be really cruel, kind of narcissism to a lot of this, because a lot of the time you hear defenders of trigger warnings say, well, it just helps me have a better experience if I know, as a rape survivor or as abuse survivor, that there's this kind of content in there. Now, we want to live in a sympathetic world, and it's probably not very nice going around feeling, reliving experiences from your past that are pretty horrible. But that's not what's supposed to happen when you interact with art. When you go to stand in front of Picasso's Guernica for the first time, you're not meant to necessarily, it's not meant to make you relive your own trauma. You're meant to be thinking about Franco. You're meant to be thinking about the things that happened then. And then the way in which great art works is that there's layers. Maybe your experience comes out later. Maybe, I went to see Paula Rego recently, and first of all, you're looking at a kind of dog human kind of, and then you think that's disgusting, and then you take a while and you see something else. And I think that the kind of in positioning trigger warnings gives a very superficial view, because you just, for example, if you go along with what some universities are doing and say, like, the Merchant of Venice trigger warning racism, anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
That's not what the Merchant of Venice is primarily about.
Yes.
And to read it in that way would be to be doing both Shakespeare and yourself a disservice.
It's an interesting perspective that you take, because, it's very easy, isn't it, to mock some of the more egregious examples of trigger warnings. If you take I think there's one at UCL on an archaeology course as a trigger warning, you may see remains or bones or dead bodies, and I would have thought that's quite an obvious thing. But there is a kind of broader question about the infantilism of this kind of stuff. Is that, someone taking a course like that, someone taking a course in literature or the classics, surely must be adult enough to know that it might contain such themes and this kind of thing. But then that has to be balanced, or does it have to be balanced, with the argument that it can reignite trauma, and that all we're doing is just making these courses more inclusive?
I think we have to be really hard on this, which is that if you are, once you become an adult and enter into the world, never mind the extremely safe space of a university campus, things are going to happen to you that will make you relive trauma, or that will, be unpleasant. You'll see something on the street that will remind you of a past boyfriend, or, anything from the superficial to the serious. Life is not a kind of walk in the park. The good things about life only, and particularly the good things about art, only become apparent. The wonderful things, the sublime things, the things that make you cry with joy, are also only available to you if you understand that there is horror and terror and death. Some of the greatest comedies centre around terrible things. We have dark humour for a reason. And it's just pretty... I think it's pretty childish to suggest that you should be allowed to walk... I don't know why you would want to walk around in a world in which people were pretending, because that's what a trigger warning is, really.
Yes.
It's a pretense.
I kind of feel a little bit like, when you apply these trigger warnings to books and films and plays and all the rest of it, you are taking away some of the experience of the show,
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're deciding when the audience finds out information about the plot or the reveal or whatever.
Yeah.
How could you know better than the person that's made it?
Well, does it just mean that we're so sort of concerned about causing offence or people's emotional safety is the word that they use, obviously, that we're forgetting that often great art is meant to be shocking, is meant to throw you this way and that, and play with your emotions, and be upsetting sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. What's left? Well, I don't know what the purpose of it is if you don't have some of that. I think safety's overrated in art.
Yeah, exactly. But this word safety, I think, is misused, isn't it, Josh? When we talk about you're not made unsafe by a work of art, that's just not a thing.
No, not at all. My aim in life is to be a physical trigger warning. I want my name to ring out, and that's enough. They don't need to put any words afterwards. They're like, that's it. The warning is Josh Howie.
I don't think it's going to happen, particularly in that Santa hat.
You don't think? We haven't seen what's underneath it. truly terrifying.
Is it?
Trigger warning, baldness.
We have.
Yeah, you have seen it.
This is a funny thing, though. I mean, this idea, I don't think that trigger warnings are a form of censorship. I don't think, they're not saying that they're going to cancel things. But what they do is they create a kind of atmosphere where people suddenly mistrust books or works of art, and they suddenly see them as things that are dangerous, which they're
Absolutely.
not.
And it's infantilizing, and that's what she talks about. And I thought it was a great interview, and she's very super duper clever. And what she talks about at the end about creating these little monsters, that seems to be the real danger, that they're not connecting or empathizing in any way with the characters because they are prepared for it, or because they have that distance.
Yeah.
And that's what great art is meant to do. It's meant to make us feel.
Yeah.
And so if these trigger warnings are creating some kind of barrier, I think that is the danger.
Well, Ella was on again quite recently on Free Speech Nation a couple of weeks ago, just talking about the Pogues fairy tale in New York, which uses some slurs which a lot of people consider are really, really offensive. But in the context of the song, it's about a couple having a big row and throwing insults at each other, and it's almost like people just don't, they're not even prepared to attempt to understand what the artist is trying to do. They're just reacting reflexively to a word.
What does it mean to me personally? And of course the song's about the concept of unhappy marriage or relationships or whatever the song's about, but it's not about you personally watching it at home. And it is narcissistic to make it all about you.
Do you think this is happening more and more in comedy? I mean,
Go
on, Krista. Sorry, I mean, because I've noticed it, just a couple of heckles which have been less the kind of drunken you're rubbish kind of heckle, which I used to get a lot, and now it's more a kind of that shouldn't be said, or that's offensive, or
right. Well, bizarrely, I never hear this "get off your rubbish." Like, that's not very common. But what seems to be common is occasionally there's a sneaky little email after the gig, or
that's what's happening.
Tell them to their face.
The sneaky email, or as happened with Mary Burke, people tweeting the promoters and getting the show cancelled. I mean, I had someone stand up in an Edinburgh show and try to stop the show because she felt I was being misogynistic because I was mocking the then Prime Minister Theresa May. How is that not punching up? How is that not? I mean, she's the most powerful person in the country.
No, but it's just to say a word is enough. And you say, it's enough. Like in real life, it is different from obviously online stuff. And online they cut things out and they try to show it in the worst possible context. But when you're at a comedy show and you build up over your 20 and 30 minutes and you show the context and you factor in your character and what you're saying and all these different things. And when then a word is heard, you're like, can you not place it? You've had the context.
Yes.
Here is let alone the context of being in a comedy club.
Well, I think that is the main. The idea of a trigger warning in a comedy club, it's just which is it? Pick a side. Are you here to watch comedy, or are you worried about what you're going to see?
Well, I also don't think that comedy can really exist unless there is the potential for offence.
Absolutely.
I think that has to be there all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then where does all of these conversations we talked about handle with Ella Whelan, but where does this leave the classics? Where does it leave Ovid and Homer and the Iliad and all of these things that are full of violence and gore and
for
sex?
a second there, I thought that you were talking about The Simpsons.
Well, where does it leave The Simpsons? The Simpsons
has been very clever. I mean, what a lot of TV shows in America, they're working within that system, some of them quite cleverly.
Yeah.
Simpsons, and there's a show called Mythic Quest, and they're sort of bringing these things now like diversity officers into the plotting.
Right,
and doing it in a very sort of subversive
like
manner.
a kind of meta way. They're acknowledging that they have to kind of adhere to these new rules and
exactly. Great art is able to work within its limitations. Sometimes those limitations can make a work of art better.
Yes.
But trigger warnings aren't part of the art, and that's the difference. They're not. If the artist put trigger warnings in and they did it for a reason and there was intent there, then I could argue with it. But the fact that you've got these gatekeepers, and it's always the gatekeepers in all of these topics really we're talking about, coming along, and they're the ones who are putting their concepts and interferences.
There was the Romeo and Juliet production at the Globe, where they issued warnings to people about mental health and said, this might trigger you and you might need this help. I think they gave the Samaritans phone. I'm like, it's a play about suicide, right? And if you're going to go and see a Shakespeare tragedy, you should know in advance. You should have some sense that maybe it's not for you if you're going to get upset by violence, right?
Well, absolutely, and the canon rises over years and like hundreds of years. You don't want it suddenly dictated to by a handful of people saying, well, we've decided this is acceptable. It's like, no, sorry, humanity's been deciding that for centuries.
Artists have decided. But also, how boring is art going to be and sanitised if we just get rid of anything that might upset someone at any point? It's ridiculous. Anyway, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be taking a look back at a particularly fiery debate between an imam and a film producer over a movie's depiction of the Prophet Muhammad. See you in 3 minutes.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Back in June, Free Speech Nation played host to one of the most lively debates of the year. It came after the controversial film The Lady of Heaven was pulled by the cinema chain Cineworld due to its depiction of Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad. Its release in the UK had been met with widespread protests from sections of the Muslim community, and the film's executive producer, Malik Schlibach, came in to speak to one of those very protesters face to face. This was Dr. Sheikh Ramzi, Imam of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre. Have a look at this.
So I wasn't actually speaking about theology. My point was that both sides offend each other, religiously speaking. So in terms of freedom of speech, both parties should be able to respect each other instead of one trying to censor the other, right? It's not a game of who can bully the other more and then that guy, that's censored. It should be, you know, as we are in Britain, we have freedom of speech. And the only people in the world that haven't accepted this till today are these radicals, to be honest. And the main point I want to put across here is the writer of the film, they call him a hate preacher, as your guest has just done. So the only reason they call him hate preacher is because a couple of decades ago, he actually came out for the first time speaking about his beliefs, which is Abu Bakr and Umar killed the Lady Fatima. So they're saying he's a hate preacher because he doesn't fall in line with what we believe, and now he's a hate preacher again because he's doing a film about his own personal beliefs.
Do you fear for, I mean, at the moment, the protests have been peaceful. Do you fear for any possible ramifications? Some people have found the protest intimidating.
I mean, that's for the police to decide and investigate. I personally aren't fearful at all. I believe this is all empty threats. These are sort of, even though I call them radicals, they are a softer version. ISIS will threaten you, kill you, and kill you if you offend them. These groups will try to threaten violence. I mean, they're a softer version of radicalism. They are on the radical scale, but they're not exactly like ISIS.
Can I ask you, Doctor? So, do you feel with this film, what would you like to see happen? Would you? Can I put you a direct question?
Yes.
Would you like the British government to ban this film?
It's not a matter of banning. The British government usually don't ban. The British government cancel. We haven't got a blasphemy. British government already said to cancel it. It is a way which they do. They say we have been threatened. Our staff been threatened. No, none of. No, we have. 5 years I've had death threats. Allow me to tell you. What I am worried here. Which a Shia cleric. I don't know how to tell you. A Shia cleric go and stab the one little woman. He says, you done my lady, I'm going to do your lady. And the lady want to go to the Tesco or whatever, they stab him or damage him. That's what I'm worried, and that's what I'm saying.
So you wouldn't like to see the government ban this film?
It's not a matter of banning. The government cancel it. We got 120,000 people they signed. What I want to see, if the government want to ban it or not is up to government, which you decide. But the government can cancel that. He says, don't stop it. Stop it. That's the difference. That's the difference. Tell the government what is that. We haven't got the blasphemy. We don't want the film to be shown.
Right.
You know why? Because I said I am trying to prevent a lady, a Muslim lady, Sunni lady get killed because of the one cleric she has. This is what I want, and I'm going to stop it.
Let's bring Malik in. Come on.
I respect that sentiment. You're saying you want to protect Shia lady from having this problem. So
Muslim lady, no, it's Sunni ladies. Sunni ladies, not Shia ladies.
Muslim, non-Muslim, I agree with you to stop any type of violence. But this is what I say to you: the radicals now are claiming and having this rhetoric of saying you are not allowed to speak about these things, otherwise we will commit violence. Sir, I ask you, sir, doctor, I ask you. Who are you worried?
We have 120,000. We have again.
Before we answer, can we hear the question?
I ask you. Who are the ones we are worried about that are committing this violence? From what I understand, we are.
I understand she has doing it. You're telling me, and I'm telling you.
Let's just have the question and then the answer.
That was a question.
I'm saying that I hope.
Finish the question.
Doctor, I hope that it's the radicals, the fringe radicals, that we're worried about committing acts of violence, not the general Muslim population. From as far as I know, as far as I believe, the general Muslim population are peaceful individual people in this country. So if it is just these fringe radicals that we're worried about threatening, committing violence, why is it that you are saying the same thing as these radicals, which is don't speak about these things, otherwise there will be violence? If we were really against the radicals, doctor, we would be stamping out the radicals. Are we going to pay?
You cannot. Allow me to tell you. You cannot make the British people fool. They are not fool.
We won't get anywhere.
They understand. This is important. They cannot. They can. You want a pack of lies to give them, and it's wrong. Totally wrong. And I support all the British. God bless you all.
Are we going to play whack-a-mole every time a group comes up and speaks about what they believe and these radicals threaten them, or are we going to whack these radicals?
We have a freedom of expression, but not freedom of insult. You are insulting the Fatima. Insulting the Fatima. I love the Fatima, and you are insulting it, and it's wrong because you made him. Let me tell you for audience. Allow me to tell you. Let me tell the audience. No, his father was a prophet and a warrior. He was a top warrior. 5 or 6 war he was there. Her husband was called Asadullah, the lion of God. and his son was. Allow me to tell you. What is happening? What
we all understand,
and they make it like this.
Sorry, guys, we're going to have to put an end to this. We all understand that you're offended, and we all understand you expressed your reasons for being offended, but we are evading the point.
Yeah.
And the point is this: if there was a film that offended me, for instance, should I have the right to say nobody should be able to see that film, or is it just what offends you?
No, what we have here, we have 120,000. Again, you don't understand it, 120,000. We have our signature. It gone to the government, and the government look at it every 5 minutes. They seen it. Government look 120,000. Let's do something about it. And they done something about it. That's my opinion for the government because I work with the government. However,
and you've expressed it very clearly, and I understand the strength of emotion. I do understand.
People does not want to see.
I would like one final word for Malik.
My one final word is actually for the UK population in general. This radical rabbit hole is a lot deeper than we realise. For me, anyone who tries to threaten or bully groups to express themselves freely as long as they're staying within the law is by definition a radical. And these people that I've been debating last week on live television are on the radical scale. They're just a softer form of radicalism.
Okay, well, I think both of you have expressed your views very clearly. When one person was speaking at a time, we were able to kind of get there. And I think this shows that it's really important to be able to talk and not just talk over each other. I think
I didn't talk over it. It's how it goes. That's a debate. Somebody says that. Somebody says no. What if the last thing I tell you, my brother and sister?
Even on live TV.
Can I say I know
one
live
more
TV?
Point, and then we've got to go to break.
God bless you. Now, there's a very, very important thing is that this one made for revenge from the Shias to the Sunnis, and I am trying to say, please, we want to prevent the little lady get killed in the middle of the street.
So obviously emotions running very high. Josh, I mean, it's always the case when someone is offended when it comes to their personal religious beliefs, people do take it personally, they do get upset. But in my view has always been, if you don't want to watch a film, don't buy a ticket, right?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it was shameful really that Cineworld pulled it. And I think that when the story first broke, I remember the way it was being sold in the press was that it was somehow an anti-Muslim film, and this was the response to it. And actually, it wasn't that at all. It's a sectarian issue, and so some Muslims were offended by a piece of work that other Muslims had made.
Yeah.
Yet still, the vocal minority was enough to breed fear and to then get Cineworld to act against freedom of speech and to pull this film.
And I suppose we haven't seen this from other religious groups much, although if you go back to, say, Jerry Springer the Opera or something like that, there were Christian groups saying that this should be banned, they wanted it to be pulled. But in all of these cases, surely the worst thing is to capitulate to that.
Of course it was. I mean, yeah, and it goes back further than that. We've got Life of Brian. Yeah, of course. So all of that, and that was debated at the time. But society has progressed, yet somehow it hasn't. And when it is when people are going to protest and whatever, and that's enough for people to go, oh well, we don't want to upset anyone. Oh, just shut it all down.
Well, a lot of it, I think, as I mentioned during the interview, is intimidation. I think people were scared by the protesters gathered outside, and it's difficult, isn't it, to totally divorce those kind of protests with some of the actual things, such as the murder of Samuel Paty in France over the depiction of the Prophet Muhammad, Charlie Hebdo, and all of those things. I mean, those things really did happen, and they were about religious sensibilities being. And I'm not saying at all that these particular protesters would have sanctioned violence. They were peaceful protests, but people still have those ideas in their heads, don't they?
Yeah, I understand people being scared of the ramifications, but I'm scared of being scared of the ramifications, because where does it end?
So is your view that we should just say to protesters, well, you're free to protest, but people are still going to watch this film?
Yeah, and I found it a very frustrating watch. It's very uncomfortable.
The actual film or the interview?
The interview, not least of all because some of my ex-boyfriends probably recognise the arguing style there.
Well, it's people not listening or just talking over each other, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
But like I say...
I felt like you didn't make any inroads. Watching it was painful because I...
Yeah, well, that's a different... But like I say, when emotions are running high, that's what happens, right?
Yeah, but I don't feel like his emotions... He was shouting a lot, but it was like on rote almost.
Right.
So I don't know if it was about emotion for him. He was making his point, and this is, I guess, part of the benefits of free speech is giving people platforms to explain themselves, and I don't think he did a particularly good job at it.
Right, well, there we go. So anyway, after the break, we're going to be looking back on my discussion with former Minister Anne Widdecombe about International Women's Day. See you in 3 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to this Christmas edition of Free Speech Nation. So in March, we celebrated International Women's Day in style, interviewing the former MP turned author and TV personality, Anne Widdecombe. And in her own inimitable style, she had a few things to say about contemporary feminism.
But Anne, you have benefited insofar as that you came up through the ranks as a politician at a time when surely it must have been particularly difficult as a woman. You owe a lot to feminism, do you not?
I do not. I was a 1970s feminist when our line was, all we want is equality, give us equality, level playing field. We'll show you we're as good as, and in some cases better than the men. That was the challenge the feminists threw out in the 70s, when I may remind you that that was a period when it was perfectly lawful, it was when I was a graduate, for an employer to advertise one job with two rates of pay underneath, one for men and one for women. That was lawful. That was what we were fighting then. But in the 90s, all that changed. And it suddenly became one massive whinge. Oh dear, we haven't made it on a level playing field. Now we want that playing field tilted towards us. Now we want quotas. We want all women shortlists. We want positive discrimination. That to me is not feminism, and I owe nothing to that sort of feminism. I owe it to those of us who, like me, were asking for equality. We never wanted the whinging rot now. I can remember it being said in the 70s, oh dear, you know, you women talk about equality, but you have this thing every month and you go through the menopause. And we said, nothing to do with it, you know, no worse than a winter chill. What's the fuss about? Now, you know, firms are supposed to have menopause policies and the whole thing's gone absolutely bonkers.
So are you suggesting, Anne, that you feel that there's a kind of a way in which feminism has taken a turn to the extent where women are saying we're victims, we're weak, and your approach would be very different, I suppose?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, if you think of the suffragettes who were campaigning for the vote, they didn't whinge, they didn't talk about victimhood. And if you look at the 70s feminists who really were fighting serious inequality, they didn't talk about victimhood. But now, the truth is, we won. And there's never such a thing as the cause complete. Somebody's always then got to find something else to try and have a grievance about. And so having won, it's now changed completely.
But do you accept, though, I mean, misogyny still exists. There are still sexist men in positions of power.
So does misandry. So does misandry still exist?
But is that not less frequent, shall we say, than misogyny? And you know, I suppose the counter-argument would be that some of the things you mentioned there about having two different rates of pay for the same work, which we would think is unthinkable, and yet it takes quite a long time, doesn't it, to dismantle the effects of that in society? Do you not think there's still a fight to be had?
And that practice became unlawful. And when women say now, oh dear, our pay isn't equal to the men, it's because of all manner of things, such as, for example, that women are far more likely to work part-time than men, so that has a massive impact on the statistics. Women are far more likely to take time out to have children than men. That has a massive impact on the statistics. None of that is ever taken into account. It's whinge. Well, I ain't no whinger, and I object to people like you patronising me and telling me I'm a victim of misogyny, because I jolly well am not.
That sounds a lot like internalised misogyny to me, Anne. I don't mean it, by the way, and I'm absolutely not accusing you of that at all. But look, you know, it does feel to me like your perspective on this is perhaps the marginal one, and that certainly looking at some of the tweets around International Women's Day, is that a lot of women saw it as an opportunity to be proud and to actually take a positive spin on things and say, look at what women have achieved, and isn't this wonderful?
Yes, and I'm all in favour of that. I'm all in favour of celebrating what's been achieved. Have you noticed how so often when people are talking about women in politics, they manage not to mention Margaret Thatcher, whose achievement, you know, was the greatest political achievement of women. She was the first woman prime minister, and yet people somehow seem to manage not quite to mention her so much. And I do want to celebrate what we've achieved, but I want to celebrate what the world's achieved. I want to celebrate what the men have achieved as well. People like Jenner and smallpox, you know, Pasteur and anthrax. I want to celebrate what Marie Curie, for a woman, I want to celebrate what everybody's achieved. I don't want to be singled out into this patronised division which says, oh dear, you're a woman. Let me tell you a story, a very quick story.
Absolutely.
When all the Blair babes came in, 101 of them, you might remember, in Parliament, we might as well have had 101 Dalmatians, and they all came in, and about 6 months after they came in, one of them came up to me in a corridor, and she said to me, in the House of Commons, she said to me, Anne, isn't it horrible how the men are so rude to us? And I said, yes. And isn't it horrible how they're so rude to each other? And she hadn't thought of that. She'd just been roughed up in the chamber. She assumed it was because she was a woman. In fact, it was because she was useless.
Well, what do you say, though, Anne, to people who point at, say, STEM subjects and the fact that girls still, even today, are less likely to go into certain subject areas because there might be a perception that it's not for them? Do you have any sympathy with that perspective?
Not really. I mean, I think there was a time, and there seriously was a time when, for example, it was quite pioneering if you were a woman engineer, or even, you know, if you were a woman prison officer. When I was first prisons minister, there weren't that many, certainly not working in men's prisons. So, yes, I mean, I have huge respect for people who pioneer, but there is an enormous difference between that and saying, simply because there are not enough women doing something. It must be because they're women, instead of simply respecting choices. Now, a lot of women reject going into Parliament, not because they're incapable of it, but because they actually happen to give a priority to families. And if you've got a constituency in Yorkshire and you've got to be in London, very, very difficult to manage a family. That is their choice. We should respect that choice, not lament it. And it's up to individuals what they want to do. There's virtually no glass ceiling now. It's a load of nonsense. And there are virtually no barriers except when people decide that there are. And that's what that woman did in the corridor in the House of Commons. She decided there was a barrier. There wasn't.
I mean, she's undeniably funny. The thing is, Cressida, she did benefit from feminism. You know, there was a time when women in this country could never have dreamed of becoming a politician. So do you think she should maybe be not so hard on the feminists?
No, I agree with every word. Great, we've won. I'm here. Well, I don't understand. You know, globally, yes.
Yes, there are still very much problems in other countries.
But in my experience, the people who would like to have International Women's Day aren't necessarily looking globally. And I just, oh, come on, you know.
I mean, what do you think, George? Is it the case that International Women's Day, there is still a role for it to play in a world where women, I mean, if you take what's happening in Iran, for example, where women are completely oppressed if they choose not to wear the veil, there is still a need for a global...
Absolutely. Well, first I just want to say, I don't think that she benefited from feminism. She was a feminist in the purest sense and made those changes happen.
Yeah.
You know, at that time.
Yeah.
Made that transition. But yes, of course, now and what's happening in Afghanistan, and now they've cancelled universities there for women. Of course it should be, but I sort of disagree with one of her points is that the whole point of International Women's Day is it does raise awareness to these things. So if it is directed like in a more international sense, as opposed to in countries where these great strides have been taken, then I think that International Women's Day does serve a function to highlight that, because it's with awareness that then the change hopefully builds. And the pressure, but she talked about building pressure and whatever, that first comes from awareness.
Yes.
So if we can focus on those issues, it's ridiculous that one day a year will change anything as such, but sometimes just having a moment of reflection can push people.
But it's true, isn't it? You know, that women in politics, in particular. I mean, it's been a success story. Insofar as we've had 3 female prime ministers. I know the last one didn't last particularly long, but nevertheless, it's still a major achievement. Three female prime ministers.
Absolutely. This is my point. It's like I don't think there's anything I haven't been able to do. I'm sure there are some exceptions to that, but broadly, you know,
Urinate
I haven't.
Standing up.
There you go, urinate standing up. Other than that, Josh, if we can get our minds out of the gutter.
That's not a source of oppression.
I don't want to be told not being able to urinate standing up.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You don't know how good it is.
Well, I think we've got a quiet dignity that you can only dream of. No, I'm a fan of Claire Fox and Camille Parlier. I think this is just... It always, to me, it feels like we're trying to turn women into children. So we've got girls and adult men, and I'm sick of it.
What did you make
of?
Do you remember when Harriet Harman had her pink battle bus, and she was going around the country trying to encourage women to get into politics because they like pink? You like pink, don't you? People like you.
We love it. We love it. Women are less interested in things that men are often interested in. And I don't have a problem with that. And it's the same old thing, isn't it? Why nobody's saying, why aren't there any female bricklayers? I mean...
Why aren't there any female bricklayers?
Because we're not interested in bricks.
Well, why not? Is that not just social conditioning?
You're missing out again.
Bricks are great,
Oh
aren't
my
they?
God, I just love playing with my bricks, and then I go and do a wee. I love it. It's great.
The lads love the bricks. You know what I'm saying? It's me being laddish. Okay, after the break on Free Speech Nation, we will be taking a look back at the best viral videos of the year and solving your festive, unfiltered dilemmas. See you in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello and welcome back to this Christmas edition of Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It's time for Social Sensations, the part of the show where we take a look back at the videos that went viral this year. And our first clip has an awkward exchange when someone won a prize on an Australian TV show.
Go to your front door, Christine.
Tell us who you're going to take.
I'm going to take my husband.
Oh, why?
He's got terminal cancer.
Oh.
That's not good. I don't know.
Terminal cancer is not good.
Terminal cancer is not good.
Oh, okay.
But they should have done a little background research really before putting that out as a big fun, elaborate.
The way she was holding back there, like she was like, I don't want to say, and now I'm going to destroy this TV show.
Well, she didn't want to embarrass them.
I know, which is really nice of her, considering what she's going through.
Yes.
And then it was just like,
that's.
So she was pausing, holding back the bag. I thought she was drunk. I thought, who's giving her all these drinks? What's going on?
I think that was part of the prize ceremony.
So they bothered to do the props, but not talk to her. Brilliant.
Yeah. They just don't give prizes to people with terminal cancer because it'll backfire.
I don't know if that's the Christmas lesson to learn.
Is that not what, no, that's not what the message is. Okay, yeah. I may have misunderstood. Okay, well, we'll have a look at this next clip. And this is a clip from the shop Robert Dias that goes out of its way to make everyone feel included in the holiday season.
Hi, my name's Marcus. I work at Robert Dias and I'm gay. I like going out with my friends and playing volleyball. I also like showing our gay and straight customers a funky range of our Christmas gifts.
Hi, my name is James. I'm straight and I work at Robert Dias. I like sailing, baking and showing off all our Christmas kitchen gadgets to our gay and straight customers.
I'm straight and I love shopping at Robert Dias.
I'm gay and I love shopping at Robert Dias.
I'm bisexual and I always find something I love at Robert Dias.
Look at this Christmas tree. It's perfect for a gay person or a straight person.
This drill would work a treat in a straight person's home or a gay person's.
Robert Dias, where gays and straights can buy drills and much, much more.
And this clip goes viral every year, right? They made it a few years ago, and it's a great advert because it was clearly cheap.
Oh my gosh, it's a work of art.
Isn't it?
I like the way that where the guy's holding the tree, he's like, I'm gay. He's just got this little tree phallic thing going on. He's sort of stroking it.
You're reading an awful lot into this.
I'm a semiotics buff. What can I say?
I understand.
Fantastic.
It's an effective ad campaign, isn't it?
Is it? What's it aiming to do?
Well, I think it's aiming
to stop you going to Robert Dyer.
Well,
no, I want to spend more money there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I just first need to figure out what I am.
Yeah, you do.
Before going in, that's the issue.
Because there's always been an ambiguity.
Yeah, at the door, I'll be like, oh no, I want to buy this pan. I don't know.
And also,
maybe they can help you.
I'm not sure gay people like drills and DIY. You know, it's not.
That is deeply DIY phobic.
Is it? Good for them though for coming up with a cheap idea that does well every year.
Absolutely.
Good on Robert Dias.
Says Andrew Doyle, homosexual.
There we go. That should come up on my strap.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, we've got this TikTok video that went viral this month, and this is a Grinch destroying a family's home. Considering the parents paid for this, is this child abuse? Let's have a look at what happened. Now, I've seen a couple of clips like this where people dressed up as Grinches are coming in to steal the children's presents. Is this like a new thing now? Is this what we're doing?
It's the first time I've seen. Are you planning to have a Grinch costume for your kids?
Well, Josh has 5 kids.
Terrifying.
But in a way, it might teach them a lesson. You know, maybe this is just a more realistic lesson about the world. Is that yes, you know, sometimes you get good things, positive things, gifts. Sometimes they get taken away from you. This is actually a good thing.
And sometimes Daddy needs to work on Christmas.
Right, exactly. So they need to get there. Although I'd have to say with that clip, the screams of the children do make me a bit nervous.
Oh, it's definitely, it's horrible. It's and I saw another video where the guy was like putting the presents in a bag and taking, you know, they don't know any different. It is nasty.
Is it mean?
Sure, I can't always tell with kids. Sometimes I can't work out if they're having fun or screaming for their life.
I am very finely attuned to the difference between being beaten up by their 4-year-old, 5-year-old brother or genuine, like,
Yes, but is there a sense in which they are too spoiled? Not your kids.
Definitely not.
They're not. But you know, they get gruel, don't they, at Christmas?
Yeah.
But you know,
they're lucky. they've actually got a drill from Dyson.
They've got Robert Dias. But the thing is, you know, is it not the case that something like, you know, my family who have kids and they spend basically money they don't have on the children, and the kids compete with other kids to, you know, is it not maybe bad for the kids to be so pampered?
Yes, and certainly when they have Christmas and Hanukkah, which is 8 days of presents as well. So this year we're paring it down a little bit. But the problem is when they get older, when they're young, you can just buy them literally plastic tat, and they feel like they're amazed. But then when they cross a certain threshold of like 11, 12, suddenly it goes into
now it's all like AI and
electrical goods and whatnot. Then suddenly it's like it's painful. But this year, thanks to the Christmas goodwill of GBNews, my children will actually get some decent presents. It's been a tough couple of years.
I don't think they should be so pampered. When I was a kid, I was happy with a Toblerone. Half a Toblerone, split it with my brother.
Half a Toblerone?
Well, I mean, it was a decent,
Do you have a decent Grinch outfit? Was there any expensive costume buying?
I'm exaggerating, but you know, as very small children, we like playing with the boxes and things like that, you know. And
I remember that.
Nothing wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that.
No? Okay. Well, a few thoughts there from my panellists. I'm not seriously suggesting that people should be mean to their children at Christmas. I just want to emphasise that. But now it's the part of the show where we're going to go through your festive-themed unfiltered dilemmas. I'm very grateful for you all to email, when you always continually email in these problems, and we regularly fail to solve them. But hopefully tonight we might be able to do something. This is a dilemma that's coming from Molly. And Molly has said, my partner replaces the jokes inside the Christmas crackers with his own. I've never revealed this secret. Do I tell our guests? Well, if they're not very good jokes, you know, it depends. If he's a good comedian, that could work, I suppose.
Well, they're usually bad jokes, aren't they?
Well, they're deliberately bad, aren't they?
Which way around? Yeah. So is he putting better jokes in or worse jokes?
Well, Molly did not clarify what was happening there. It's an odd way to try out material, though, isn't it?
No, I think it's a really good way.
It's honest, organic.
Yeah, that's a really desperate way for validation over the Christmas table. But also, like, how long are these jokes? Like, it would be good if what would be funny was if you open the cracker and then literally like a 10 page.
It's like a big routine.
Came out. Oh look, okay, and then everyone has to sit there whilst you do this. Guys, it's not my. Look, I'm just going with tradition here.
I think you should definitely do this with one of your stand-up routines. I think that'd be good. All right, let's have a look at our second dilemma. This one has come in from Keith. Hello, Keith. Happy Christmas. Keith has asked, how do I politely hint to my wife to keep the receipt for the gift she buys me this Christmas? On the principle of the thing, I mean, it is rude, isn't it, saying keep the receipt because I may not like your taste in whatever gifts you've got.
What you should say is like keep the receipt because we might be able to use it. It might be tax deductible.
Oh, I see
if
what
it's
you mean.
like if I wear it on work or something like that. So that might be one way of doing it. The other thing to do is what my wife and I do, which is to just buy our own presents.
Yes.
And then give it and then hand it across. I mean, it's
How
only
romantic.
because she's such a terrible sort of gift giver.
Yes.
That I had to in the end just say, I'm sorry, I can't bear this anymore.
I mean, shouldn't you just be honest with your partner and say, look, I don't fully trust your taste in gifts?
I don't know if you should be honest or just smile sweet. I think this goes back to the money thing. Don't spend so much in the first place. You know, charity shop gifts, homemade stuff. Isn't that a good solution?
Maybe, but
That's why
we won't know because we've got to end the show. Thanks for joining us for this special festive edition of Free Speech Nation. Thanks to my panel and to you, the viewers at home, and we'll see you in the new year.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television and online, across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein.